The stars blazed against the infinite darkness as Oscar Reeves floated weightless in the observation dome of the research vessel Prometheus. Through the transparent aluminum, the vast expanse of the universe stretched out before him, a cosmic tapestry of light and shadow. His fingers traced the edge of the viewport as he contemplated the irony of his situation. A xenobiologist, he had spent his entire career studying life forms that defied Earth's narrow definitions. Yet he had never encountered anything that challenged his preconceptions quite like the reports about the Kornathy. The ship hummed with the quiet efficiency of advanced technology as Oscar reviewed his notes on his personal display. The Kornathy Empire, or what little humanity knew of it, dominated the eastern quadrant of this sector. Official reports painted them as brutish warriors with green skin, curved horns, and an insatiable appetite for conquest. But Oscar had always suspected there was more to the story. His mentor, Dr. Helena Martinez, had once whispered to him during a late-night research session that the greatest scientific discoveries often began by questioning what everyone else accepted as truth. Dr. Reeves, the ship's AI, announced, its synthesized voice cutting through his reverie. "We are approaching the neutral zone boundaries. Captain Winters requests your presence on the bridge." Oscar pushed off from the viewport, gliding gracefully through the zero-gravity corridor toward the bridge. The Prometheus was a marvel of human engineering, designed for deep space exploration and scientific research rather than combat. Its crew of 30 included astronomers, geologists, and biologists, all eager to discover new life forms and expand humanity's understanding of the universe. As he entered the bridge, Captain Winters turned from her command station. Her weathered face bore the scars of decades in space, but her eyes still held the spark of adventure that had drawn her to the stars. "Dr. Reeves, we've received clearance to proceed into the area designated for research. However, I want to keep this brief. The Kornathy have been active in this region lately." Oscar secured himself to a nearby console, his feet magnetizing to the deck. "What kind of activity?" "Patrols, mostly. But they've been more aggressive since the Helios incident last month." The captain's expression darkened. 3 of our mining ships were attacked without provocation. Survivors reported the Kornathy vessels opened fire immediately upon contact. The reports have been all over the news feeds. Images of shattered ships, interviews with traumatized survivors, and endless expert analysis about the Kornathy threat. Yet something about the accounts had never sat right with Oscar. The survivors' descriptions varied wildly, from accounts of massive battlecruisers to reports of smaller, faster ships. The attack patterns seemed inconsistent with standard military doctrine. "Captain," he ventured, "has anyone considered that there might be rogue elements within the Kornathy? Not everything they do appears coordinated." Captain Winters raised an eyebrow. "Are you suggesting they're not a unified threat, Doctor?" "I'm suggesting we don't have enough information to make that determination." Before the captain could respond, alarms suddenly shrieked throughout the bridge. Red warning lights bathed the crew in a crimson glow as the ship's defensive systems sprang to life. "Multiple contacts bearing 275 Mark 30, shouted the tactical officer. "They're coming in fast." Oscar's heart pounded as he watched the display. 3 massive ships emerged from the shadows of a nearby asteroid field, their dark hulls bristling with weapon arrays. They were Kornathy vessels, their distinctive angular design unmistakable even at this distance. "This is Captain Sarah Winters of the UES Prometheus," the captain broadcast. "We are a peaceful research vessel operating within neutral space. Please state your—" Her words were cut off as brilliant beams of energy lanced across space, striking the Prometheus's shields. The ship shuddered violently, throwing several crew members to the deck. "Return fire," Winters commanded, but Oscar knew their research ship was no match for military cruisers. The battle was brief and decisive. Within minutes, the Prometheus's shields failed and explosions rocked the ship. Emergency alerts filled the air as systems began failing across all decks. "All hands, abandon ship." The captain's voice carried an edge of defeat. Proceed to escape pods immediately. Oscar raced through the tilting corridors, gravity fluctuating wildly as the ship's systems struggled to compensate. He reached an escape pod just as another explosion sent him tumbling forward. He scrambled into the pod, slamming his hand on the emergency launch button as debris rained down around him. The small pod burst away from the dying Prometheus just as the research vessels. Reactor containment failed. The explosion lit up space like a supernova, the shockwave sending Oscar's pod spinning wildly. Through the viewport, he watched the burning remains of his ship and countless souls scattered across the void. His pod's navigation computer struggled to maintain guidance, warning lights indicating multiple system failures. The moon looming before him grew larger with terrifying speed. Without functional retro-rockets, he was going to hit atmosphere far too fast. The entry was a nightmare of fire and violence. The pod's heat shield did its best to protect him, but the small craft wasn't designed for uncontrolled atmospheric entry. Oscar's last coherent thought before consciousness fled was that he'd likely end up as just another story of human scientists who pushed too far into dangerous territory. When Oscar finally awoke, the first thing he noticed was the absence of pain. That seemed wrong. He should hurt everywhere after a crash like that. His eyes fluttered open to dim light, filtering through what appeared to be a cave opening. The air smelled of sulfur and something organic he couldn't identify. He tried to sit up and discovered his chest was bound with some kind of primitive bandage. Looking down, he found the material was actually quite sophisticated, made from what looked like processed plant fibers interwoven with metallic threads. Medical science, but not human technology. A shadow fell across him, and Oscar's head snapped up. There, silhouetted against the cave entrance, stood a Cornathi. The figure was tall, perhaps 7 feet, with the distinctive curved horns he'd seen in countless briefings. Green skin caught the filtered light, creating an almost iridescent effect. But it was the eyes that captured his attention, deep, intelligent, and filled with something he couldn't quite identify. Oscar's hand instinctively reached for a weapon that wasn't there. His mind raced through his limited training in self-defense. The Cornathi took a step forward, and Oscar tensed. "You understand English." The words were heavily accented, each syllable carefully pronounced. Oscar stared, mouth agape. "You speak English?" The Cornathi's expression shifted to what might have been amusement. "Not. First choice. Universal translator is damaged." She gestured to a device on her ear. "Your species uses many tongues. You shouldn't be able to speak at all." Oscar blurted out before he could stop himself. "Every report says Cornathi are beasts." The word carried a sharp edge. Monsters? Savages? She moved closer, and Oscar could see the intricate patterns of scales along her skin, the way her muscles moved with predatory grace. "I know what your people say about mine." Fear battled with curiosity in Oscar's mind. "Then why?" He gestured to his bandaged chest. "Why do I heal instead of kill?" She settled into a crouch, bringing them closer to eye level. "Perhaps I am a monster you expect. Perhaps I keep you alive for darker purposes." Despite his fear, Oscar found himself studying her features. The vicious beast of propaganda had been replaced by something far more complex. This Cornathi moved with purpose, spoke with intelligence, and had chosen to save rather than kill. "What's your name?" he asked finally. "Farera." She tilted her head, considering him. "And you are Oscar Reeves. I found identification in your survival pod." "How did you?" "I have been watching human vessels for some time. Learning. Preparing." She stood abruptly. "Rest now. Your injuries are severe. We will speak more when you are stronger." Farera turned to leave, but Oscar called out, "Wait." She paused at the entrance. "Why did you save me?" She looked back, and for a moment, the harsh angles of her face seemed to soften. "Because I have seen enough of death." Then she was gone, leaving Oscar alone with questions that challenged everything he thought he knew. Over the following days, Oscar learned the rhythm of the cave. Farera would appear regularly, bringing strange but nutritious food, checking his bandages, and gradually revealing more about herself. She spoke of the Kornathi in terms that contradicted intelligence reports, describing a culture of artisans, scholars, and warriors bound by honor rather than bloodlust. Your ships, Oscar ventured one day as she rewrapped his healing wounds. They attacked without warning. 3 vessels destroyed, dozens of lives lost. Ferrara's hands stilled on the bandage. Which vessels bore your flag? The Helios. The Venture. The Venture was not attacked by our ships. Oscar's head snapped up. What? The survivors clearly stated. They stated what someone wanted them to believe. Ferrara's eyes met his, dark and intense. There are powers within my people who seek war, just as there are among yours. Meaning, Malzer. The name seemed to taste bitter in her mouth. My uncle's primary advisor. He has long believed the Kornathi Empire should expand, that your kind represents either a threat or an opportunity for conquest. Oscar processed this information, his scientific mind categorizing and analyzing. And the attack on the Prometheus? I tried to warn them. My communications were intercepted. Ferrara finished the bandage and sat back on her heels. Malzer has many loyal to him. My own position has been complicated. Your position? Ferrara stood and moved to the cave entrance, looking out at the harsh landscape beyond. I'm not simply a soldier, Oscar Reeves. I am the daughter of the late matriarch. I should have inherited leadership of our people. The revelation struck Oscar like a physical blow. Your royalty, exiled royalty. Her laugh held no humor. Accused of sympathizing with potential enemies. Malzer orchestrated my disgrace, claiming I had made unauthorized contact with human representatives. In truth, I had merely advocated for caution rather than aggression. So when you saved me, I confirmed every accusation against me. She turned back to him. By our laws, I have committed treason. If discovered, we would both face execution. The weight of her sacrifice settled over Oscar. This being, whom his people called monster and beast, had risked everything to save his life. Why tell me this? Because war is coming, and perhaps together we can prevent it. Ferrara's expression hardened with determination. But first you must heal. The world outside this cave is not kind to the wounded. As if to emphasize her point, a bestial roar echoed from somewhere beyond the cave. Oscar had heard that sound before in his feverish dreams, a hunting cry that spoke of something massive and hungry. The cave stalkers, Ferrara explained. Territorial predatos. This cave was their nest before I cleared it. They return periodically, hunting for anything that moves. You cleared out a predator's den? Alone. Ferrara smiled, revealing sharp teeth. I am not without skills, doctor. The Kornathi may not focus on technology as obsessively as your people, but we are adaptable, strong, skilled in combat. Oscar found himself studying her with new appreciation. The propaganda had focused on savagery, but now he saw the calculated movements of a trained warrior, the careful consideration of a strategic mind. What else do they get wrong in our reports? Many things. She moved to a collection of equipment near the cave wall, salvaged from his pod and supplemented with items he didn't recognize. Your people fear our strength, but underestimate our culture. We prize knowledge, though differently than you might expect. We have poetry, art, philosophy. I'd like to learn more. Something shifted in Ferrara's demeanor at his words. First, you must learn to move again. We cannot remain here indefinitely. Over the next several days, Oscar pushed himself to recover under Ferrara's watchful care. She taught him about the plants and creatures of this moon, how to identify food sources from deadly traps. In return, he shared his knowledge of xenobiology, fascinated by how her understanding of life forms differed from human science. They developed a routine, punctuated by Ferrara's occasional absences, to scout the surrounding area. On one such scouting mission, she returned with troubling news. A search party has landed. They seek escape pod from your ship. Oscar's heart sank. Rescue. The ships bear Kornathi markings. Malzer's forces. Her expression was grim. If they find you here, with me, it will prove every accusation he has made. Then I'll hide elsewhere. You shouldn't. No. Ferrara's hand on his arm silenced him. We face this together, or Malzer wins. There's something else. She produced a small device from her pack. I recovered this from a wreckage site. It appears to be a data recorder. Oscar examined the device, recognizing Earth technology. This is military-grade equipment. Only certain ships carry these. The wreckage was recent, human design, but destroyed by weapons that match neither human nor Kornathy signatures. A chill ran down Oscar's spine. Someone else was involved in the attacks, or made it appear that way. Ferrara's eyes met his. This device may contain evidence. If it could access its data, we could prove Malzer's deception. Oscar turned the device over, noting the damage. But it would need proper equipment to interface with. Ferrara nodded toward the cave entrance. There's a place. Ancient ruins, built by the first ones who came before. Their technology surpasses both our peoples. But to reach it, she paused, choosing words carefully. The journey will be dangerous. More dangerous than remaining here? She looked out at the landscape, where distant shapes moved against the horizon. The search expands. They will find us eventually. Turning back to him, she added, if you are strong enough to travel, we should leave before the next cycle begins. Oscar stood, testing his weight. The pain was manageable, his body responding to whatever compounds Ferrara had used in her treatments. I'm ready. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Ferrara had salvaged a remarkable amount from his pod, including a partially functional environmental suit and various tools. She added to these supplies with her own provisions. Weapons that seemed designed for both cutting and defense, compact rations, and a portable shelter. You've been planning this, Oscar realized as she efficiently packed their gear. I've been planning many things, she admitted. Exile provides much time for contemplation. She handed him a knife made from what looked like crystal, but felt impossibly sharp. For protection, I hope you won't need it. As night fell on the moon's surface, they set out from the cave. The landscape was harsh, jagged rocks, deep crevasses, and the occasional vent of sulfuric gas. They moved in silence, communicating with gestures as they navigated the treacherous terrain. 2 hours into their journey, Ferrara suddenly stopped, holding up a hand for silence. In the distance, lights moved against the darkness, the search parties. They were closer than expected. We must change course, Ferrara whispered. Through the lava tubes. Oscar had read about such formations, but never imagined experiencing them. The tubes formed a network of ancient passages created by flowing magma, now serving as shelter from the moon's harsh surface. As they descended into the first tunnel, Oscar switched on his suit's headlamp. The tunnel opened into a vast underground system, stretching beyond their light's reach. Formations of crystal caught and reflected their illumination, creating a cathedral of light within the darkness. Despite their urgent situation, Oscar couldn't help pausing in wonder. Beautiful, he murmured. Ferrara glanced back, surprise evident even in the dim light. You find beauty here? How could I not? Oscar gestured to the crystalline structures. Your world has wonders we never imagined. Something in her expression softened. Perhaps there is hope after all. She turned forward again, leading them deeper into the tunnels. They traveled through the night, the underground network providing both shelter and concealment. As they paused to rest in a chamber where mineral deposits created a natural amphitheater, Oscar found himself watching Ferrara as she studied their route on a primitive but effective map. May I ask you something personal? She looked up curious. You have earned that right. What was it like growing up as royalty among the Kornathy? Ferrara considered the question, her fingers tracing patterns on the cave floor. Different from what you might expect. We are raised to serve, not to be served. The matriarch's daughter learns combat, strategy, governance, and most importantly, empathy for all within the empire. Including other species? Especially other species. My mother believed that true strength came from understanding, not domination. Ferrara's expression grew distant. She saw the futility of endless warfare, how it depleted our resources and our spirit. Malzer disagreed vehemently. He argued that showing mercy was weakness, that the Cornathi Empire should expand to secure our future. When I took my mother's message to younger counselors, when I suggested perhaps opening communications with humanity, she gestured helplessly. Suddenly, I was accused of treason, of plotting with enemies. How did you end up here? I could have fought the accusations. Many still believed in my mother's vision. Ferrara's voice dropped, but fighting would have meant civil war. I chose exile to preserve unity. Oscar struggled to reconcile the noble figure before him with the monsters described in military briefings. We've been so wrong about your people, and my people about yours. She smiled sadly. Fear creates myths, and myths create fear. They continued their journey, growing more comfortable with each other's presence. Ferrara taught him Cornathi words, laughing gently at his pronunciation. In return, he shared stories of Earth, describing oceans and forests she had only seen in intercepted transmissions. When they finally emerged from the tunnels near dawn, the landscape had changed dramatically. Ahead rose a structure that defied easy description, a complex of towers and spheres that seemed to flow from the ground itself, constructed from materials that shimmered between solidity and translucence. The Forerunner Complex, Ferrara announced with evident reverence. Built by beings so advanced they make both our peoples look primitive. As they approached, Oscar's scientific side blazed with excitement. This architecture, it doesn't follow any design principles I know. The technology within is even more remarkable. Ferrara led him to what appeared to be an entrance, though how she recognized it as such, Oscar couldn't determine. Here, the data recorder might be accessed. The structure's interior proved even more amazing than its exterior. Surfaces that seemed solid became transparent at touch. Geometric patterns shifted in response to movement. Most remarkably, as they penetrated deeper into the complex, lights began activating, as if the building itself acknowledged their presence. It's responding to us, Oscar breathed in amazement. The Forerunners designed their structures to adapt to visitors. Ferrara approached what looked like a console, its surface unmarked by any visible controls. I have accessed their systems before, through trial and great patience. She placed her hands on the surface, and suddenly holographic displays materialized around them. Geometric symbols flowed across the air, rearranging themselves as Ferrara made subtle movements. The interface adapts to the user, she explained, producing the recovered data recorder. If we can convince it to recognize Earth technology. The process took hours of patient experimentation. Oscar found himself working alongside Ferrara, their combined knowledge allowing them to make progress neither could have achieved alone. When the Forerunner system finally interfaced with the recorder, they both held their breath. Data streams filled the air, flight logs, sensor readings, and most significantly, recorded transmissions. As they reviewed the information, a horrifying picture emerged. These ships weren't destroyed in battle, Oscar realized, reading the data. They were ambushed while responding to false distress signals. And the attackers. Ferrara's voice trailed off as she highlighted specific signatures. The weapons used were advanced versions of both Cornathi and human designs. Modified and combined. Oscar felt sick as understanding dawned. Someone has been arming third parties to attack both our peoples. The final data file brought the picture into terrible clarity. Audio records captured conversations that implicated not just Malzer, but corrupt elements within human military command as well. They're orchestrating a war, Ferrara said flatly. Human and Cornathi extremists working together to create conflict that will allow them to seize power. Before they could fully process the implications, distant explosions rocked the complex. Through a newly transparent wall, they saw ships descending. A mix of Cornathi and human vessels working in coordination. Malzer's forces, Ferrara identified them immediately. They found us, and they're not alone. Oscar pointed to the human ships. That's military hardware, not civilian. Their discovery had drawn attention, and not the kind they wanted. Ferrara quickly began copying the data to her own storage device, while Oscar searched for alternative exits. They're jamming communications, Farera reported grimly. We cannot broadcast this evidence. Explosions drew nearer as the attacking force methodically advanced on their position. The ancient structure, despite its remarkable resilience, began showing signs of damage. There, Oscar spotted a passage marked with symbols different from the rest. That looks like a maintenance access. They raced through unfamiliar corridors as the complex trembled around them. Behind them, armed figures entered the building, their shouts echoing off crystalline walls. The maintenance passage led to a vertical shaft. Without hesitation, Farera activated some function of the ancient technology, and platforms began extending from the walls, creating a descending stairway. As they descended, a larger explosion shook the structure. Debris began falling, forcing them to increase their pace. They were perhaps halfway down when a voice called out from above. Princess Farera. The title dripped with mockery. Surrender now, and your human pet dies cleanly. Farera's response was to increase their descent speed. But Oscar grabbed her arm. Wait, he whispered. Your pet? They think I'm your prisoner. Understanding dawned in her eyes. If they believe that, they will expect me to protect you. Use that. His mind raced with possibilities. Can you create a distraction? What are you planning? Trust me. Farera hesitated only a moment before nodding. She reached into her pack and produced what looked like a metallic sphere. Flash grenade. Primitive, but effective. Perfect. Oscar took position. When I signal, throw it up the shaft. He cupped his hands around his mouth and called out. Princess Farera, your capture means nothing. The data is already transmitted. Silence followed his declaration, then hurried whispers. Taking that as his cue, Oscar signaled Farera. The grenade detonated with brilliant light and concussive force. Immediately, they resumed their descent at maximum speed, using the moment of enemy confusion to gain distance. They reached the bottom just as their pursuers recovered. This level of the complex offered something unexpected. What appeared to be a hangar bay with vehicles that defied conventional design. Forerunner shuttles. Farera identified them with satisfaction. These systems might still be active. Working frantically as footsteps echoed down the shaft, they managed to activate one of the vessels. The interface adapted to their combined presence, responding to their urgent need. The shuttle lifted off just as their pursuers reached the hangar, energy weapons lighting up the space they had occupied moments before. Farera proved surprisingly adept at piloting the ancient craft, maneuvering through the complex's defensive systems that somehow recognized them as authorized users. They burst into the moon's sky, leaving the attacking forces behind. But their relief was short-lived as they detected the fleet waiting in orbit. Too many. Farera assessed the tactical display. This shuttle has weapons, but we are outnumbered. Where's the nearest neutral territory? The Kazoth Station. Farera input coordinates. A trading post that maintains independence from both our peoples. If we can reach it, the chase sequence stretched their abilities to the limit. The Forerunner shuttle proved remarkably maneuverable, and its weapons were devastatingly effective, but the combined human Kornathi force pressed them hard. During a brief respite while the enemy regrouped, Farera turned to Oscar. If we don't survive this, I want you to know, you changed my understanding of your people. And you mine. Oscar reached across the small space between them, covering her hand with his. We'll survive. We have to. This data is the only way to prevent the war. Their moment was interrupted by proximity alarms. The enemy had split their forces, attempting to box them in. The asteroid field ahead, Oscar suggested. Can we lose them there? Dangerous. For them and us. Better than certain death. Farera nodded, pushing the shuttle toward the debris field. The chase entered the asteroids at perilous speeds, with rocks ranging from pebbles to mountain-sized obstacles creating a deadly maze. The Forerunner craft responded to their controls with precision that saved their lives repeatedly. Behind them, the pursuing ships weren't so fortunate. Several collided with asteroids, while others fell back, unwilling to risk the dangerous terrain. They were down to 3 pursuers when disaster struck. A massive asteroid suddenly loomed ahead, too large to avoid at their current speed. Far-Era attempted evasive maneuvers, but the laws of physics would not be denied. The impact sent them spinning, systems failing across the board. Through dimming displays, Oscar saw their pursuers closing in, weapons charging for the kill. "Jump pod," Far-Era commanded, pulling him toward a chamber he hadn't noticed before. Now! They tumbled into the escape system just as enemy fire tore through the shuttle. The pod ejected forcefully, tumbling end over end before stabilizers engaged. Through the transparent sections of the pod, they watched their shuttle explode, creating a new light in the asteroid field. Their pursuers hesitated, apparently satisfied with the destruction of their craft. "They think we're dead," Oscar realized. "Let them believe it." Far-Era worked the pod systems. "We have minimal life support and no FTL capability. But we should reach Kazoo Station. Eventually, the pod drifted through space, a tiny speck among the asteroids. Inside, Oscar and Far-Era took stock of their situation. They had the data that could prevent a war, but no way to broadcast it, and only enough supplies for a few days. "How far to the station?" Oscar asked. 3 days at this speed." Farrar's expression was troubled. "We will arrive weak and vulnerable. We have evidence that implicates both our people's leadership in conspiracy. That should provide protection. From those who seek peace, yes. But if Malzer has reached Kazoo Station first." They both understood the implications. The next days would require careful planning and cooperation. As they worked to conserve their resources and plot their approach to the station, Oscar found himself increasingly aware of Farrar's presence in the confined space. "Can I ask you something?" he ventured during a rest period. "Always. What will happen if we expose this conspiracy? To you personally, I mean." Far-Era was quiet for a long moment. "If my people believe the evidence, I may be welcome back. Malzer will likely face execution for treason." She paused. "But the laws regarding contact with other species remain unchanged. Meaning, the matriarch, or her successor, cannot form attachments beyond her people." The meaning was clear in her tone. Oscar felt an unexpected ache at her words. Somewhere between the cave and their desperate escape, his feelings had evolved beyond mere respect or even friendship. The thought of returning to their separate worlds seemed suddenly unbearable. What if we chose a different path? The question emerged before he could consider the consequences. Far-Era met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "There is no path that leads to both peace for our peoples and personal happiness for us. We won't know unless we try." Before she could respond, proximity alarms announced their approach to Kazoo Station. The trading post appeared as a metallic sphere bristling with docking arms and communication arrays. Ships of various designs clustered around it like metal fish around a reef. "I'm detecting coded Kornathi military transmissions," Far-Era reported tensely. "Malzer may already have agents here. Human military frequencies, too." Oscar pointed to the displays. "They're coordinating something. Their pod's arrival would not go unnoticed. They needed a plan." "The station's administrator is Elder Kazoth," Far-Era explained. "He has maintained neutrality for decades. If we can reach him directly, we need to appear non-threatening." Oscar considered their options. "What if we claimed refugee status? The station has protocols for that." They agreed on their approach. As their pod was tractored into a docking bay, they attempted to look appropriately distressed, not difficult given their actual state. Station security boarded quickly, a mix of species Oscar had only seen in xenobiology texts. The lead officer, a being whose arm ended in specialized manipulative tendrils, greeted them with mechanical translation. "Identify yourselves. State purpose of visit to Kazoo Station." "We are refugees," Far-Era stated clearly, "fleeing persecution. We request sanctuary under neutral law." The officer's compound eyes reflected their image kaleidoscopically. "Species conflict, something like that," Oscar added. "We have information critical to preventing a wider war." The mention of war got the officer's attention. Within the hour, they found themselves in a secure conference room, facing Elder Kazoth himself. The ancient being resembled a cross between a spider and a deep-sea creature, with bioluminescent patterns pulsing across its carapace. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Kazotha's translated voice resonated through the chamber. You are known to me, Princess Farera, but you travel with a human, and both your peoples have ships in my space making demands. That is why we need sanctuary. Farera placed the data storage device on the table. We have evidence of a conspiracy that threatens peace throughout this sector. They spent hours explaining their discoveries, presenting the data, and fielding questions from Kazoth and his advisors. The ancient being's responses were measured, revealing neither belief nor skepticism. This data is troubling, Kazoth finally acknowledged. But verification is needed. How do I know this is not simply a human research scientist and an exiled princess conspiring against their respective governments? Test the data, Oscar challenged. Your station must have analytical protocols. Indeed, Kazoth gestured, and holograms filled the space around them, technical breakdowns of the evidence they presented. My initial scan suggests authenticity, but such things can be fabricated. Before either could respond, alarms rang throughout the station. Emergency protocols activated as multiple warnings appeared in the holographic field. Unauthorized military actions detected, an automated system announced. Human and Kornathi vessels conducting joint operations without station approval. Through the observation portal, they watched in horror as coordinated strikes hit civilian ships. The explosions were clearly visible against the dark backdrop of space. They're creating an incident, Farera realized, making it appear that the station failed to prevent violence. Kazotha's carapace patterns shifted to deeper hues, a sign of agitation. Give me communication with both fleets. Now, as his staff scrambled to establish contact, Oscar and Farera exchanged knowing looks. Malzer and his human counterparts were escalating, using the station's neutral status against it. We can stop this, Oscar stated firmly. Let us broadcast the data across all channels. That would violate station neutrality. Kazoth responded automatically, but his tone suggested uncertainty. Another explosion, larger than before, rocked one of the civilian vessels. Emergency beacons filled the communication channels with distress calls. How neutral is standing by while innocents die? Farera demanded. Use your broadcast power. Send this data to every military frequency. Kazotha's bioluminescent patterns stabilized into what they'd learned indicated decision. Analyze the data stream. If it validates completely, I will grant broadcast access. The verification process took minutes that felt like hours. Each explosion, each distress call, added urgency to their situation. Finally, the analysis completed. Data integrity confirmed. The system announced. Source authentication achieves 97% probability. Broadcast protocols enabled, Kazoth decided. But understand, this action will have consequences for us all. The transmission blast cut through jamming efforts, flooding every military and civilian channel in the sector with their evidence. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Both the human and Kornathi attack forces hesitated, their commanders undoubtedly receiving the data in real time. Within the hour, loyal elements within both fleets turned their weapons against the conspirators. The space around Kazoth Station became a battleground as those who would choose peace fought those who profit from war. Inside the station, Oscar and Farera remained in protective custody, watching the conflict unfold. When word came that Malzer had been arrested by his own forces, along with several high-ranking human officers, relief washed over them. But their personal situation remained complicated. The matriarch, my cousin Shirak, has sent a message, Farera read from a transmitted diplomatic text. She acknowledges my innocence and invites my return. The position of royal advisor awaits me, and the human government wants me to join their diplomatic corps. Oscar shared his own message. They're establishing a formal embassy in Kornathi space. They looked at each other across the conference table, the weight of their respective duties creating a distance neither had felt even in battle. We saved countless lives today, Fararis said softly. Perhaps.